Hey, good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show, the show where we share our collective police expertise and informed opinions on the topics of the day. I'm George Holt.
I'm Gil Contreras.
And to my left, we have once and again Ride Along Radio Show contributor JB. JB, welcome back.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Outstanding. That's two in a row. So you're getting ready to stop being company. You're going to have to,
I'll be like furniture.
Yeah. You're going to stop being company, though, man. You're going to stop getting the guest treatment. So we, there's been a lot going on and a lot of topics to cover. And we always start off doing our social media. And, maybe we should give a little intro to people who don't really know. This is the first time you're watching the show. Everybody here is either current, former, or retired law enforcement. That's everybody here on the panel. And that's what I mean when I say we offer our training experience and informed opinions on the topics of the day. They're informed by our background as police officers and as concerned and informed citizens. Because people forget, cops are citizens too,
They are.
So it's not just like we can only offer our opinion on things that have to do with the police and the community. We are a pretty well-rounded panel here, and I think we can talk about other things, and we often do. So, but we always start off with our social media feedback. And the one notable thing that we got from last week was Cavett Haynes, who cleared up what he meant by he took exception to David Cruz's comment about when David Cruz said he was Gil's number one fan.
Right.
And Cavett Haynes says, no, he meant that he was Gil's number one fan. Yes. I asked him to clear that up. And if you go to our Ride Along Show page, you'll see there's actually a photo posted where C. Haynes has superimposed his face over Kent Lee's body. And with Gil, and C. Hayes standing in the hallway here at Morris Media Studios. And it's actually a pretty good graphic. So we're going to try to find it. But if we don't find it in time, you can find it on the Ride Along Radio Show page.
Tell him, Gil, it's okay. He can't help it. He's only human, right?
It's also on my Facebook page.
Oh, it's on mine too. So if you're friends with myself or Gil, you can pull it up. He also said that he wants to be present when we do show 100, and he's going to volunteer to be the head of your security detail.
Wow, I'm going to need security.
He's going to need security. So,
my security's local, number one.
Right.
And, I got that all locked down. So.
All right. Well, hopefully you won't need it. It's a secure facility anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Plus, if you come sideways at Gil, I got something for you.
Yeah, you don't need security. You are the security, right? Securities. So, in news of the day, we covered this before, and this is a good follow-up to it. The Tamir Rice shooting that happened in Cleveland now a couple of years ago.
Right.
We just had one officer got 12 days off for that, and another officer was terminated, allegedly not for that. So what we're going to do is we happen to have on the line Steve Loomis, who is the president of the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association, which is the union that represents police officers in Cleveland. Steve, how are you?
Good, very good, sir. How are you?
All right, man. Thanks for joining us again. You guys represent the rank and file, or how far? What ranks do you represent within the department?
Yeah, we have. I have about 99 dispatchers. I have patrolmen and detectives.
I remember that I think I asked you that before, and I remember it being unusual that you had dispatchers in your union. At least it's unusual from a West Coast perspective. I think it's a good idea, though.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, under California law, dispatchers get the same disciplinary procedure that police officers get anyway, because you can't treat civilian and sworn differently in disciplinary proceedings. So it actually makes perfect sense that you'd be able to represent dispatchers as well.
Yeah, it works out well for us up here, and I get a lot of great information from the dispatchers firsthand and very, very quickly. If there's something going on that I might be part of a Group 1 page, a citywide page, well, of course, they're calling us last.
Right, but the dispatcher is going to let you know up front.
They let me know right now.
Yeah, that's your membership. That's good, man.
It's great.
Now, I assume you guys have police. You have female police officers.
Yes, sir.
And how does that work with the term patrolman?
until you brought it up right now, it hasn't been an issue.
See, we're from California. We always got to mix that in there.
I was going to say, that's a West Coast thing. We're sensitive to everything on this side of the country. So
hopefully you're all watching the Cavs lose right now.
You know what? I was getting ready to say, go. I was going to close our conversation with "Go Warriors," but you beat me to it. But so what we have is a video. It's a quick news clip.
Yes, sir.
That kind of explains what happened here, and then I'd like to delve into that so that we can really kind of chop that up there. So we're going to roll the video. You'll be able to listen in, and then we'll come back to the conversation.
Following the story since those shots were fired, the big question: now what?
Frank, Patrol Officer Timothy Lohman has already appealed the city's decision today. Something we found usually results in officers getting their jobs back. An exclusive on-your-side investigation found during a 4-year period, 6 of 7 officers who appealed after getting fired were allowed back on the force. Lohman shot and killed Tamir Rice outside Cudell Recreation Center in 2014, but was fired for lying on his application. While making the announcement today, Chief Calvin Williams told reporters he has faith the department's decision will not be overruled.
Well, we have every expectation that the decision will stick. I mean, again, we went through a 2-year process in making these decisions, so we expect them to be upheld.
Lohman's partner, Frank Garnback, was also disciplined today. He was suspended for 10 days for driving too close as he and Lohman approached Tamir Rice. Garnback is also appealing the city's disciplinary decision. On your side, I'm investigator Sarah Buttison, News 5.
All right, Sarah, and today the head of the police union didn't mince words when he blasted the city's decision to fire Officer Lohman and suspend Officer Garnback. Union head Steve Loomis vowed these punishments will be overturned.
The evidence clearly shows that these gentlemen did not do anything illegal. They did not do anything outside of our policy, outside of our training, and this is a politically motivated witch hunt.
Did you know we hear?
Loomis says he believes today's punishments were simply designed to appease a community still outraged by Rice's shooting.
All right. So, Steve, that was you there on the news there expressing your outrage.
Yeah, it was a little snippet of about a 22-minute press conference that we had.
Of course. I got to go for the soundbite.
Right.
Sure.
Now, the things that stand out for me about that coverage was that they used the word, they said 6 out of 7 officers are allowed back. And that always irks me when people say that, as opposed to they were ordered back or they were reinstated, or the city's decision was overturned. They were allowed back. Like, oh, okay, well, we'll let you come. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the city didn't do anything wrong. They're just going to be cool and let you come back to work. Having worked in an agency where there was 2 agencies actually, where there was a high turnover rate or overturn rate, to me, my personal experience has been whenever you see that many officers, that higher percentage of police officers getting their jobs back, it means either internal affairs doesn't know what they're doing, or those officers are getting fired for the wrong reasons, and or getting fired when they should not be getting fired. And when somebody who is neutral,
or their rights are being violated,
or they're right. That's what I mean by internal affairs doesn't know what they're doing, right? And then when somebody who's neutral, an arbitrator or a judge or whoever gets a hold of it, they go, no.
Right.
What are you doing? So, because I know that if 6 out of 7 of my cases as a detective had been kicked out, or they wouldn't file them, somebody would be coming to talk to me about my job performance.
Oh, you'd be walking a beat somewhere.
Right, you wouldn't have been a detective for very long, right?
Yeah. And I'm a detective. I've been in the police department for 24 years. I'm a detective in the strike force unit, which is a major crimes unit, and I've been a union president for about 8 years now. And I can tell you, without doubt, that this is the most offensive witch hunt investigation that I have ever seen anywhere in the country that I've been involved in or heard of. It is absolute. It's an absolute travesty of justice. I have a mayor that's in an election year that's having a rough time right now, trying to justify things. This is how this thing went, fellas. 4 different independent agencies, police agencies, federal, state, and local, investigated this thing as much as it could possibly be investigated because of the tones, the national tones of it, which is fine. And I had a press conference early on that says, I don't care if God Almighty himself comes down here and investigates this thing, as long as the people listen to the result of the investigation. We're not afraid of the facts.
Right.
The fact is that we're on a gun run at an open rec center. A 5'7", 191-pound person turned at a police car that was coming at them and pulled a gun out of his waistband. It's unfortunate. It's tragic. There's no winners here. I've said that from day one. But those are the facts that those officers had to deal with right then and there.
And I think, you said that when you were the first time that you called into the show.
Yes, sir.
With that, it was, and you and I had a conversation off the air where you said, hey, this is just a tragedy because what was the officer supposed to do? Now, one of the things we did talk about was the tactics involved and how we felt that those tactics may have precipitated the shooting by that officer putting that vehicle too close to the suspect, and then this passenger bails out and he feels he has no choice but to shoot. But as you told us, there were some extenuating circumstances there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was found by the State Highway Patrol, who investigated the vehicle portion of that, was that zone car, first of all, those were still shots. That video that we see, those are just still shots of a security camera that are kind of put together. You know how you're a kid, you're doing a stick figure on the end of your notebook and you just flip
the pages, right. They probably had a low frame rate on their video.
Right. Absolutely. But the news people can play that thing as fast or as slow as they want to make that car look like it was going as fast or as slow as they want. And the reality is that it was going between 7 and 9 miles an hour. And it slid 17 feet.
Because was it muddy or snowy or something like that?
Yeah, it was a snow ice combination, and you can see the tracks even in the video where that car, he stood on those brakes and he said, Steve, that thing, it felt like the car accelerated when he was standing on the brakes with the anti-lock brakes, bumping along there. He was trying everything he could do to get that car stopped because they were expecting the guy with the gun to run,
right,
not stand up and walk towards them. And
which is typically what happens, right?
It is just it's a perfect storm of really bad things happen. If any one thing changed just a little bit, we wouldn't be here right now. And but the fact of the matter is that was investigated by 4 independent investigative agencies. There was no criminal wrongdoing on their part. A grand jury said the same thing. The county prosecutor said the same thing. So then the mayor put together a CIRC team, a critical incident review committee.
Had that been done before for any other incident?
And
Steve, had that been done before? Is that a new thing?
Before.
Never. Okay.
Never been done before.
Steve, what was the composition of that panel?
Well, here it is. It is a Blaine Griffin, who's an African-American gentleman, and that shouldn't matter, but it does, apparently. Mm-hmm. He's the director of community relations. He's on the cabinet of the mayor. Damon Scott, another African-American gentleman, that is in charge of our Office of Professional Standards. They take civilian complaints. Cassandra Bledsoe, African-American female, that works directly for the chief's office. She's the community liaison. So none of the 3 of them have any investigative experience.
That was my next question.
Are they peace officers at all?
Must not be.
No,
not even the female?
None of the 3 of them.
And to what extent did their input, since we're being candid, to what extent do you think their input played in some of the decision making, especially given that they're in the positions that they're in and lack the obvious experience?
Well, as I looked at this panel, and there was also several other people. There was a command staff commander. There was a deputy chief. Those guys are appointed by the mayor. They work at the pleasure of the mayor. There was an attorney from the law department, Nancy Kelly. Wonderful lady, very good attorney. But she works at the pleasure of the mayor. And then we had a lieutenant from internal affairs, one instructor, a master instructor from our academy, and a captain that was the executive assistant to the chief. So I'm looking at this panel going, oh, my God, this thing is clearly slanted a certain direction, looking for a certain result. Much to my surprise, that panel took 10 months to look at the investigation, and their report was that Tim Lohman and Frank Garnbeck did nothing wrong. They did not violate any of our rules. They did not violate any of our policies. They did not violate any of our training. Everything that happened was explainable, and that was the report that they gave the mayor. Okay? 10 months later. Now, the important part about this is that 5 months before that investigative report was complete, the mayor, who's in an election year, remember, writes a $6 million check to this family.
Right.
In a settlement. 5 months prior, fellas, 5 months prior to an investigative report coming out. It is inconceivable to me. So now the mayor's got a problem, right? He wrote a $6 million check.
Right, absent a lot of facts.
Nothing to justify it.
Right.
So 3 days after that report comes out, oh, by the way, the chief didn't like the report, so he wanted them to change it. He wanted them to look at 4 more things. To their credit, the CERT committee said, we're not changing anything, chief. So they did an addendum and looked at 4 things that the chief wanted them to look at. One was the fact that Frank Garnbeck didn't call on to that assignment when he got there. There was a lot going on.
What does that got to do with the shooting, though?
Nothing. Wouldn't have changed a thing. The other was that in the 93 seconds from the time they left one assignment to the time they called out for shots fired, they didn't call radio and ask if there was any updates. That is insanity. We don't do that here. We've never done that here.
I don't think I've ever done that. If there's an update, dispatch is going to let you know there's an update. Typically,
absolutely. The chief knows.
I mean, I don't know. Has that been your experience?
Well, so here's what I would say. In the past that has not happened, but on the West Coast we are we've taken a different stance on tactics, because in this incident, a number of guys that I work with, we talked about the incident and kind of wondered, why didn't a few things happen? But you brought up something tonight that I didn't even think about that lends it into like why you wouldn't slow down your response to that. Here on the West Coast, unless it's raining or foggy or significant precipitation, we usually have an airship up. But when you tell me that a guy is going into a park and he's hitting the brakes and he's sliding because of snow, I know there's not an airship likely up. That said, there's a number of different variables. So I know that where I work at, we ask the dispatchers sometimes for an update because, as George is alluding to, not all of them ask, but a lot of them do provide updates.
Right. Yeah, typically that's what they're supposed to do.
Right. And so in that instance, and as I'm listening to this, I don't know where your chief came from, but I do know that the International Association of Chiefs of Police is heavy on pushing a number of the things that you typically see in West Coast organizations or in larger organizations like Detroit or Cincinnati or D.C. or New York, places where these national groups get together and they promote some of these new tactics in hopes of avoiding use of force, to include officer-involved shooting. So when I listened to that, when you talked about going on assignment, if I'm not mistaken, we call that going code 6. Right. You come on the air and you say we are on scene or we are in the area and we're investigating it. That's becoming more and more of a national model because of a lot of agencies saying it's imperative to know when you're there.
Well, I don't think he's saying that they shouldn't have done it. He just didn't do it, but him doing it didn't have any impact on whether the shooting was going to happen or not.
Especially if it's not a violation of policy. If you don't require them to do that and you don't teach that as being prudent and have something to back it up, it's important, I guess, if you want to look at maybe some recommendations, but you can't judge that
incident
by that standard.
It has nothing to do with what everybody's mad about.
No.
Right.
Right.
No, I agree
Let's just boil it down.
Right,
It's
right.
got nothing to do with what everybody's pissed off about. They didn't write
Right.
the $6 million check because the dude didn't go code 6.
Yeah, well, no, and before I forget, the other thing is, you know, it is a tragedy. You know, no police officer wants to shoot anyone, let alone a kid, and certainly it's not a pretty situation. It looks bad, but when you consider the timing and everything else that's going on, sometimes these elected officials think writing a check is going to make everything go away. And it doesn't, especially to the police, when you go, wait a minute, writing a check is like saying we did something wrong.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, our policy is to call onto these assignments. We don't use the 10 codes or anything like that up here, but it is to call onto the assignments. But in this case, things were happening very, very quickly. Frank Garnbeck had a relatively new rookie with him. He was trying to explain this. You know, they actually talked on the way there as to what to do if type of situation. So Frank had his hands full in that car, and then boom, we come around the corner, and here's the guy with the gun.
Right.
Sitting very closely. So, yeah, it wasn't going to change the outcome. It's something very minor. Over the last 30 years, that type of violation, rule violation, results in a written warning maybe, or a verbal counseling or something like that. It certainly doesn't rise to the level of termination. So,
well, okay, let's talk about the extermination, because the training officer got the 12 days off, and that was because they felt that he put the rookie officer in a bad position tactically.
No, he got 10 days off. He was found guilty of not calling on, like we were just discussing, not asking for updates on the way, which is absolutely ridiculous. We don't do that here, unless there's, you know, if you have a few minutes. Sometimes we have to go across the district, and that takes us 5-10 minutes, you know, and we'll ask, how many calls have you gotten on this radio, or something like that.
Sure.
You know, but the dispatcher will relay information to us as they get it.
Well, you guys have the mobile data terminals, the mobile data systems in your car?
Yeah.
So a lot of times that'll be in the comment section too, if there's any.
Well, no, we don't do the silent dispatching with that at all. Everything is old school over the radio still. So.
Okay.
But so he got found guilty of that, and that was it. And he got 10 days off for that.
All total, so a total up to 10 days.
Yeah, he got a total of 10 days off. And then, but Tim Lohman, the shooter, got no days off for anything having to do with the incident itself.
Right.
So when they found out, this is how really scummy this is terrible. This would not be allowed to happen if these officers were civilians under investigation for the same thing. They got a clean bill of health, administratively, legally, any way that you can cut it. They got a clean bill of health.
Right.
Tim Lohman had no charges whatsoever on him. 3 days after that report came out, and now the mayor's got a big problem, right? Because he wrote a $6 million check, and there's no justification for it at all.
Right.
At all. So now the safety director, at the request of the mayor, does a quality control investigation. Never heard of it before, 24 years, never been done before in the history of the city. A quality control investigation. So they start looking at this kid's employment.
Even though he had done nothing wrong.
He had done nothing wrong.
Right.
They got to fire him. I mean, guys, this kid is getting fired no matter what. They have to come up with something to fire him, because the mayor told the ministers and who are supporting him for the mayoral election, it's politics. Just like one of you said earlier, when you were talking about we get the last 6 or 7 people back because they're firing them for the wrong reasons.
Right.
This is definitely a wrong reason.
Yeah, but you know what? I've seen it happen where guys are cleaning out their locker. I was a supervisor at both agencies I worked at. And sometime it fell to me to be there when people were getting terminated. And I've seen guys cleaning their locker out saying, all right, man, I'll see you in about 6 months. I'm like, yep. Because I know they're coming back because it's a bad termination. There's no way you fire people for that kind of stuff. But the administration knows that. And they know it's politically expedient to get rid of this person for whatever. I've known of 2 cases where people have gotten their jobs back after being recommended for termination for misconduct or violating policies, and they've gotten their jobs back with no discipline at all when it was all said and done, which means that was clearly a bad termination. So, and this is probably going to be what this is. Now, having said that, if he was dishonest on his application, he left himself hanging like that. But, was he dishonest on his application, or was that a matter of interpretation so we can get to firing him for something?
And here's the thing with that, and this is the real deal. That kid, his father retired from the New York City Police Department. On our application, he didn't lie about anything on there. They're saying that he omitted information on there. On our application, there's a specific question that says, have you ever applied for a job in another police department?
Right.
Including Cleveland, list them. So the first one he listed was Cleveland. The second one was New York City Police Department. Third one was Akron Police Department. The fourth one was Independence Police Department, which is the department that's causing him all this trouble.
Right.
So here's the deal. There was only 4 spots on there, but he applied for 8 different police departments.
Sure.
So they're saying because he didn't list the other 8 or the other 4 police departments on there, that he lied on his application, and he needs to be fired for that.
Everybody in your agency needs to be worried about this coming down on them too.
And I told him that. I actually did a public records request on the employment applications of every command staff.
I was going to say I'd start with the chief.
Yep, every command staff member.
You know,
and when they supplied them to me, but 70% of their applications were redacted.
Oh, isn't that something?
Were whited out. So now we're going into court to force them to give us that information, because I'm going to have private investigators go out and do background checks on every single one of those guys.
Right. Right.
So it wasn't that he lied about anything. And then if you go to Independence, which is the police department that hired him, the first police department that hired him, if you look at their job application, they have the same question on there. They have 8 different lines, and he listed all the departments. This used to be competitive anyhow. And I don't know about you, I applied for 6 or 7.
Sure, we call it the shotgun effect. You apply to a bunch of different agencies and hope you hit one of them.
We love the job. I don't care where I work.
Yeah, I don't care whose patch is on your shoulder typically.
Absolutely. So, and in fact, I moved from New York to Cleveland for this job. I got out of the military, and I'm from upstate New York, and I transplanted my family here because I wanted to be a cop.
Right. Nice.
But, so the reality is that this kid did not spend one day in a police uniform for the city of Independence. He was in the police academy. They said terrible things about him based on 22 hours worth of interaction that they had with him in a civilian setting. He was a cadet in a police academy here in Cleveland, one of the suburbs in Cleveland puts a police academy out. So he didn't lie about anything. If they want to make the case that information was omitted from there, it certainly wasn't done purposely. And after he resigned from the Independence Police Department. There's not one shred of evidence that says that he was fired. In fact, to the contrary, we went and got statements from the mayor and from the Human Resources Officer that says, no, it was a mutual parting of the ways, and he resigned.
Well, it was a hit job, though, man. It was a hit job, and that's all they could hang their hat on.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, and all that information came out after the Tamir Rice incident, after the Tamir Rice shooting. So that was all stuff that was created by the city of Independence, because now their reporters are going out there saying, hey, what the heck did you guys, why did you let this guy process with the Cleveland Police Department? He should have never been a cop. Let me tell you something. He went to Benedictine High School, which is a Catholic high school in the inner city of Cleveland. So it's a very, very diverse high school, and it's a private school, and he did wonderfully there. He's got a bachelor's degree. All his kids wanted, his family is top-notch. His father retired from New York City Police Department, and he wanted to work in a bigger police department because he wanted to be able
He wanted to be a big city cop, big city
he
police.
wanted to be a big city cop. For some reason, people think that's cool until you're here, right?
Hey, one of the questions I wanted to ask. One of the questions I wanted to ask regarding that is, how has that impacted your background investigations unit? Because I can see a reasonable scrutiny going to that if, in fact, they're saying that that would almost imply that there weren't the proper or adequate background.
Right, because how if he put down and that he worked these other agencies. The reason they ask you that is so the background investigator can go to those agencies and get copies of those applications, right? At which point they should have caught that, and if it was an issue, they should have said something then and not hired him.
And also, do you guys do polys for new hires?
Nope, and that was the next thing I was going to tell you, is that after he resigned from the Independence Police Department, he applied at Cleveland. He applied at a city called Brecksville and another city department called Parma Heights here in the outskirts of Cleveland. And he got hired by Cleveland, but he also got a letter of intent from Parma Heights and Brecksville, and both of those police departments require a polygraph. This was after he resigned from Independence. He passed 2 polygraphs.
Right, so if there was something there.
And if there was something there, and what do you think the first question is that they ask? Have you ever been fired from a previous job?
Right.
You know, and he passed them with flying colors. He passed 2 different police academies, one with a 92%, our police academy with a 97%. He scored 100% proficiency in 2 different state of Ohio shooting tests, OPATA certifications, we call them. 100%, didn't drop 1 round in either one of those. I mean, this is a good young man with a great background that got caught up in the politics.
Right. Well, you know what? This is a lesson for him and others earlier in their career to see that this can happen to you. Okay, that to have a realistic approach to their career, because sometimes stuff happens. Like you said, it's a tragedy, man, and now it seems like the tragedy has more layers than we even thought.
I'll tell you, after he got fired. And here's another. The conspiracy theories thicken with this. This kid is going to end up with a pocket full of money at the end of the
Sure, he is.
I can tell you that right now. And Samaria Rice. Our first hearing was supposed to be on January 26, 2017.
This is the mother. Tamir Rice's mother.
Samaria Rice is the mother of Tamir.
Yeah.
And our hearing for Frank and Tim with the safety director originally was supposed to be in January 26th. Well, they gave me the file about 7 days before that and said we're gonna have a hearing in 7 days. I'm like, no, we're not. You know,
right.
You have to give me an opportunity. 400 pages of stuff.
Sure.
You know, you have to give us an opportunity to prepare a defense. So they did. Well, Samaria Rice and her entourage showed up at that hearing over at City Hall and were disappointed in the fact that we weren't there. She came up there to, make her feeling known that these guys should be fired, which is completely inappropriate, especially given the fact that she's running around with $6 million in her pocket. But
well, that's not going to bring her son back. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Well, I could keep you busy with that whole mother-son relationship.
I know. We talked about that off the air too. Yeah, I know. I'm with you.
So,
my other question was, as far as the city's defense, did they depend on the city attorney, or did they go out and get outside counsel to support the city attorney?
They went out and got outside counsel.
And your city attorney, are they from your city, or are they a transplant from a larger bureaucracy?
No, we have a law department in the city of Cleveland, but something like of this nature, they go outside. And it's funny you mention that too, because I've tried to find out how much they've spent on these guys.
Right.
these aren't, $45,000 a year making attorneys. These are guys that are making $350, $400 an hour.
Right.
Are they from Ohio?
Yeah, they are from Ohio. They're from usually they use the same company up here. But
and do you know the history of their subject matter experts?
Yeah, the ones that we have to deal with, basically labor attorneys are the ones that they're throwing at this thing. So I don't know. That's how I know them. I don't know if they have any other background in any other venues to speak of. But yeah, they spent a lot of money on this thing and a lot of time.
Well, but you know what? They wanted to make sure that it had the outcome that they wanted, at least for right now.
Sure.
And they can always say, because we're talking negligent retention here to a certain degree,
Right.
They can always say, we got rid of him, they made us take him back.
That's absolutely what the mayor's going to say. He said it before. As a matter of fact, before June 9th, we're going to get an arbitration decision. They fired 6 of our members that were involved in a 22-mile, 20-minute-long chase of people that shot at the police, and it ended in gunfire and ended with 2 suspects dead. And they fired 6 out of 13 cops that shot. And that was the Mike Brelo case. He went on trial for that. That cost us about $500,000 to defend him, and he got acquitted. But they fired 6 people, almost randomly. There was no rhyme or reason why they fired just 6 of them. And the arbitration's going to come back, and within a week here, I'm going to get at least 5 of their jobs back, if not all 6. I guarantee you that.
Well, we saw that in Baltimore, too, with the Freddie Gray incident, where you rush to judgment and you rush to get rid of people.
And Marilyn Mosley's paying a price for that.
Yes, she is, as she should. As she should.
Yes, sir.
Well, Steve, listen, man, I appreciate you reaching out, man. I know it's late out there. And,
Did my cabbies lose already, or what? Is the game
I don't know, but probably. On my way here, they were down. They were down like 62-50, and then, I think we'll see. I think they're coming back with a vengeance from last year because this really should be their three-peat. But, you guys had to get one, so you got one.
They threw us a bone, I guess.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, thanks for calling in. We appreciate your input. Go ahead.
If I could just tell you one more thing real quick. Samaria Rice showed up at that thing. She was, very unhappy that this wasn't going on. The safety director doesn't have much of a character, so he sent her to the chief's office. The chief has a meeting with her. This is on January 26th. On February 6th, her attorney fires off a letter to the law director, to the safety director, and to the chief, explaining to them in spades that you will not interact with Samaria Rice without us being there, right? So he's kind of land-basing them. And then he goes on, and for the record, Samaria Rice does not agree with the chief when he stated that Frank Garnbeck is going to be simply disciplined while Tim Lohman is going to be fired.
What?
With this. She believes that Frank Garnbeck should be fired as well. I have the email.
And this is way back in January or February?
In February, the chief told
okay.
Samaria
Well, there it is, man. So now it's about to be 7 out of 7 get their jobs back.
Yeah.
Because the fix was in.
The fix is in. And Frank Garnbeck's hearing wasn't until March, and Tim Lohman's hearing wasn't until May. But in February, and actually in January, the chief told Samaria Rice that Frank Garnbeck was going to get disciplined and keep his job, and she didn't like that, so her attorneys fired off a letter saying as much that we have in our hand.
Well, nice. Nice. Yeah, like you said, he'll have some money in his pocket.
Yeah, we're going to put some money in his pocket for sure. So I appreciate the time, fellas, and good luck to Golden State, I guess.
Hey, man.
You've got your hands full.
Don't hate.
I lived out there for a while. I was in the Navy for 6 years. I lived in San Diego and Long Beach.
Oh, okay.
I was out there for the riots. Were you guys working out there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I was out there for the riots. That was fun.
If you say so.
Well, I'll tell you that. My wife didn't want anything to do with California anymore.
After
we were
that,
out there
yeah.
for the riots, and we were out there for a 7-2 and a 7-4, and she said, "Get me back to the East Coast."
Now
Until the first winter.
Now look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, now look at me. Yeah.
Well, Steve, we appreciate you, man. Hey, and
Yes, sir.
good, and your people there have a good president out there looking out for him, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Hey, if you see if you can see my whole press conference.
Yeah, I'll look that up. I sure will.
It's eye-opening. You can just get on my Facebook page, and it's on there.
Outstanding.
Just friend me, and I guess I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I got to get my daughter to accept it or something, you know.
All right, brother.
All right.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
Steve.
Bye.
All right.
There he goes.
There he goes. There he
Steve
goes.
Loomis.
Yes. So, well, you know, we knew that whole thing stunk anyway. And that something bad, even worse, so we knew something bad had happened, and that it wasn't the end of the bad things that were happening. So, that's terrible. But I think won't bring that young man back, but at least there can be some right done in this situation.
Yeah, hopefully the agency does. Hopefully the agency looks at a lot of the improvements that they can make, because I'm not saying that we get it perfect, but we often get it a little better or a little more correct, because we often think about, like when they were talking about the getting updates on the call.
Right.
We ask for so many reasons, because we want to know if the people are moving. Are they going to be closer to where we're approaching? And,
Sure.
Has the person left?
I don't.
Yeah, but that's a reality of today, Gil, because of what you're going to be judged on if you get into a situation, and that's why we have that. I mean, that's why that the thought process is there. It's a national model, and it's a movement that is getting bigger because they expect us to think more about what we're going to encounter. I give those guys credit. They discuss tactics on the way. That to me shows that you're being mindful of what might await you. He had a responsibility because the guy's a trainee. So you could see that he's trying. The fact that he doesn't ask for an update, that
is totally irrelevant.
Well, it's relevant to the shooting, and that's what everybody's pissed off about. You know what I mean? That's what everybody's mad about.
Whether he went code 6 on the radio.
Right. That's what they wrote. They wrote their $6 million check for that.
And you roll up, and homeboy's standing there with a gun. He's 5'7", 190. Gee, every time I see a picture of Tamir Rice, he looks like he's 10.
Right.
Yeah,
well, that's because they're showing his face, and he's still a kid in the face. He's a kid, you know.
Well, I'm just telling you the reality today. If I roll up and it's a hot call, I'm not going to wait till I get on scene to say I'm code 6. I'm going to say I'm code 6 in the area, and the reason is because I want approaching officers to know where I am, how I'm approaching, which way they.
Right. I think they waited as they were turning the corner, and oh my God, he's there.
Right. And
in a perfect world, you do all those things.
But it's never perfect.
That's right.
It still wouldn't change anything.
Police work is imperfect.
That's the bottom line.
It's
so
imperfect.
Listen, we're going to go to a break, and we're going to come back and get into our next topic, which is kind of a meaty topic. We're going to be talking about implicit bias in policing, and we have a guest who's going to be calling in. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on the Ride Along Radio Show. All right. That was, we're back. That was Fell on Black Days by Soundgarden. And, you know, we had that on the playlist for last week. I think we got to it at the very end because, rest in peace, Chris Cornell was one of to me, the best vocalist in rock music. And gone too soon. He
never
passed
even
away.
heard of him.
You never heard of Soundgarden?
Nope.
So if I played some Mac Davis or something, you'd be down with that?
You know, I would at least know who it is.
Soundgarden. Okay, well. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, Soundgarden, Black Hole Sun and Spoon Man and everything. Okay. Anyway, Chris Cornell went on to be part of Audio Slave. And actually
I have 3 channels on my Sirius XM. One is 26, classic vinyl.
I listen to that. Listen to that in Classic Rewind.
One is 18, the new Beatles channel.
Right, Love.
Today's the first. Well, it's not Love anymore. It's just the Beatles.
This is the Beatles channel.
Yeah, and it's today's the 50th year anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Right. Right.
So they're playing great music on there, stuff you never heard before. And then, of course, 126 Urban View, Hate Talk, Black
Hate Talk Radio.
Sure. So those are my 3 stations that I listen to.
I'm more of a Rolling Stones guy. You know, they say there are like two kinds of people in the world: Beatles people and Rolling Stones people. Taco Bell people and Del Taco people. I'm the Rolling Stones
we
guy.
don't eat either of those, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I'm more like a West Side Connection.
You never,
Ice Cube,
you never catch a
NWA,
you never catch a Mexican at
Dub
Acapulco.
C. Yeah,
There you go. So listen. So yeah, we're back.
Don't know any of those either.
I'm sure you don't, Gil.
You know Rodney O and Joe Cooley. You don't hear me though. That's
Yeah.
their record. You know that
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
I don't know
King
that.
T, Mixmaster Spade.
I knew Cool
Oh,
OD,
yeah.
Wild Wild West.
Oh right. Of course.
Okay, that
Of
was
course.
know
right.
that
I
one.
didn't know that one.
And go see the doctor.
No.
Oh, wow. See, that's old school for you youngsters.
That's right.
So listen. So
That's
one,
when rap was rap.
yeah, old school. One of the things that we discussed last week was implicit bias in policing.
Did we?
And, well, it came up in conversation. We didn't really drill down into it. And then I posted something on Facebook that got, and I specifically just made the post and didn't say anything about it, just to get people's response without trying to steer the conversation one way or another. And it was an article in Police One about tackling implicit bias in policing. And it was the photo that had the chief of police with the rainbow sash on, with his whole command staff wearing rainbow sashes, and talking about immersion in a culture that you're going to go police so that you can understand, right? And then people, a lot of my Facebook friends, including one Gil Contreras, had a lot to say about that.
I
think the word was utter nonsense. I think that's the phrase you used, was utter nonsense.
Yeah.
Talking about that and about cultural immersion being the way to combat the implicit bias.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But it actually is a real thing, implicit bias, and
I have some right now.
And we all have
Oh,
it.
no, that's-
We
and
actually
that's why it's called implicit.
Right. Yeah, no, we all have implicit bias.
Well, I have
and the
some in
sooner we recognize it, the more accepting we are of
And
the diversity.
man, that's all I'm trying to say.
That's it.
That's all I'm trying to say. And fortunately, we have on the phone Dave Blake, who's the owner of Blake Consulting and Training, and Dave is a retired police officer. He's a police practices expert witness and use of force instructor. He holds certifications in firearms instruction, arrest and control, and he's worked as a police academy instructor. He also holds a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice Management, a master's degree in psychology, and is currently completing his PhD in performance psychology. He authors a recurring column in Police One magazine titled The Science of Training. And Dave, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So your article that you wrote in Police One, where you talked about implicit bias, really to me was it was an eye opener, and it was also for me confirmation of certain things, and it was and I learned some things too. And I think that as to JB's point, that implicit bias exists, and maybe I think people hear the word bias and it's got a negative connotation. The words bias and prejudice always get mixed up with racism and bigotry, and they're not the same thing. So maybe you could start off talking about that and what implicit bias is, and kind of maybe we can help remove some of that stigma.
Yeah, absolutely, I can. I always start off by saying, what you just said in regards to it kind of opened your eyes and clarified some things. I really wish, honestly, that it's a little self-serving, I guess, but I wish that this article would end up on every chief of police desk in this country, personally, not because my name's associated with it, just so they can understand and get beyond the rhetoric of this association of bias, implicit bias, with racism and bigotry, just as you said. The bottom line is we as human beings, as we move through life, we have experiences, we have training, we come across all types of social situations, and all of those things get stored in memory. And
Right.
they end up ultimately providing inference and what they call heuristics and so far as biases, and we judge people, places, situations, and objects, even the food we eat, with some level of preference. I mean, I often in my class, some of the classes I teach, we talk about this to a certain degree. And I ask people in my class, I go, how many people would like to go out to lunch with me today? There's a nice place down the street that they're having cow tongue. And of course, nobody wants to go have cow tongue for lunch. And I ask them why, and I ask them, have you ever had cow tongue? and as stupid as this sounds, it's a most of those people have never tasted it, never smelled it, never come across it. But when they think of cow and the tongue, it's something that they just automatically, subconsciously infer with something that they don't want. And that's a bias in and of itself. So, just the rhetoric that's going on at the political level, at the level of, some of the policing discussions that have occurred in the media, they're framing the entire concept incorrectly and very, it's myopic. It's such a broader concept than what it's being painted.
Well, you know what, and I think that is the problem. It's not part of the problem. That is the problem. People say I'm unbiased. No, you're not. I don't have any bias. Yeah, you do. But as you said, it's something that is very human. I believe it's hardwired. It's a hardwired instinct, actually, which helps us avoid dangerous situations that we may recognize are not suitable for us. And you have to overcome it. To be an effective police officer, you have to recognize that and find ways to manage, maintain, or overcome it, just like you do with your survival instinct. Average human being is not going to run towards gunfire or run into a burning building. I've done both more than once. Because I was an on-duty police officer and I recognized that was my duty to overcome my survival instinct to want to go the hell away from the damn burning building or the guy with the gun and go to it. But, when we say we don't have biases and we look at it, well, that's a negative thing, then nobody will ever admit to being biased, and you'll never, ever be able to work around that.
Well, as George is saying, too, if we would take it outside of the context of our profession and merely look at it as human beings, we can accept that those experiences or that's part of our decision-making framework. And as long as we can accept that as human beings, which we are first, then it makes us, to me, it makes us such better police officers. Like, certain experiences have made me a better father, have made me a better, person. And so if we can accept that, it allows us to grow significantly as police officers. And as the term bias does go to a negative connotation, we have to be accepting of theories based on practices and or good solid evidence than to just be tolerant of something as if it's the philosophy du jour, because that's not what it is.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so, to take it to something that cops can really, get their teeth into, we often, in training, tactics training, use of force, we talk about fight or flight and where that comes from.
Right.
And that's that automatic physiological response that comes from what I refer to as the caveman brain, or, if somebody wants to research it out, the limbic system.
Right.
And we have that system, and then we have, our cortex, which is the analytical thinking part of the brain right behind the eyes. Those two areas are neurologically proven proven by neuroscience to be associated with this bias concept that we're talking about. So, that's kind of the neuroscience aspect. But if you start going into the works of Gary Klein and Daniel Kahneman, and people may be familiar with themes such as System 1 and System 2, thinking fast, thinking slow, some of these things that contemporary science is coming up with.
Cognitive.
Yeah. Basically what it comes down to is, this caveman brain gets the information first. They've done fMRI scans on the brain, and people are experiencing fear, those type of things. The information gets to that area of the brain first to start that fight or flight concept. But that is also where all these memories, these quick snap judgments, these inferences come from.
Right.
And that's that fast thinking. So, an example that's in so many cognitive psychology books is a woman walking along in a grassy area and spots something coiled up in the grass and immediately has a fear response, turns around, starts running away without really thinking about it. And then about a second or two later, as she's fleeing away, it pops into her mind, that really wasn't what I thought it was. And you turn around and you find out it's a coiled piece of rope or garden hose or something like that. And that is that executive portion of the brain catching up to that original inference.
Right.
And that's just the way we work with everything. So, these type of concepts not only apply to implicit racial bias, but they apply to automatic reactions. The reason why when you catch out of the side of your eye that a car is swerving into your lane when you're going down the highway, you have this automatic response. I mean, you have an inference, a belief very quickly that this car is coming into your lane, and that may not even be true. And your reaction to it may be erroneous, or it may cause bigger problems of what you would have been in the first place. But, so this concept is so broad, and it applies to so many different areas that, it's a good start to this conversation that people need to realize that, beyond what they've heard through the media, it's a bigger ticket item than that. And we're all built this way. And it's not based on something that's inherent in a certain type of person. It's inherent in how your socialization, how you grew up, what you learned.
You know what?
Makes the difference.
That is such a huge point, and I'm going to give you an example of a friend of mine. He's no longer with us, but he was a very good friend of mine, and we had a conversation one time. He was not black, and he made a point. We're talking about some girl we saw, and he goes, "Man, she was black, but she was pretty." And I said, "But," and he said, "Oh, wow." And so, we moved on about our day or whatever. And I guess he was thinking about it, because about a couple of days later, he comes back to me. He goes, "You remember I made that comment the other day?" He goes, "You have to understand, I'm from Orange County. I didn't grow up with any black people. I went to the Army, and I knew black people there, but not a lot of black females. And then I came to work as a police officer here, working in the housing projects in Los Angeles." He said, "And most of the black women I deal with, man, as cops, we're dealing with criminals. So I'm dealing with the gangbanger girls with the tattoos on their faces. I'm dealing with the prostitutes and the crackheads." He goes, "So it's just possible, man, that my frame of reference is tweaked because of that." And he goes, "That's the best thing I can tell you." And I never even thought about it. But, number one, he's right, that was his frame of reference. And number two, that's not his fault. That's been his life experience. And he didn't consciously make that decision to say that. And he wasn't trying to be offensive. And honestly, he didn't mean anything by it. He was just speaking to his friend in a natural manner. And he was being honest, and that came out. And that was just an example of how his life experiences shape his perceptions. And it didn't mean he wasn't a good police officer. He was a great police officer. It didn't mean that there was anything wrong with him, that he wasn't suitable for the job, or that he wasn't a good husband and a father and a person and a friend. We just have to understand that. And once we understand and recognize that, then we can understand how it impacts how we do our jobs. And then maybe we can do a better job of combating that when it's not appropriate. And
that's a good example, George, that you give to someone actually having that aha moment. The fact that he recognized it, and the fact that you guys are friends, it makes it easy for him to have this conversation with you, because that could have turned very bad if he was riding in a car with his sister, or moreover, a black police officer who wasn't, or maybe who didn't offer that opportunity for him to have that kind of environment. Blake, I actually have asked the people that I've been around that have brought up implicit bias. So I'm going to ask you the same question. When did you have your aha moment? When did the light come on for you that you recognized and accepted, and then, decided to take this on?
Well, I think this, this is not my necessarily my specialty area. It is I'm a consumer of this type of research, okay?
Right.
It's very closely related with what I do, so this interests me. What prompted me to get involved in this is some of the information that's been put out there, and I've been unbelievably surprised that none of the PhDs out there, the people that are in the know, the people that are researchers that are associated with the IACP and some other agencies, haven't really come out very strongly or at all and said, most of this rhetoric is incorrect. Let me explain how it is. So that's what prompted me to write this particular article and do the research behind it. But if you want to talk about an aha moment, I had an aha moment when I was a working police officer with the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit Police Department.
I can only imagine.
As infamous
Bart.
as that is, that probably, yeah, I know. So, you know, but here's the example, and I rarely get to tell this story, but this is before I got into academics. This was 15, 20 years ago, or 15. But ultimately, you know, I stopped a black gentleman on the train on Thanksgiving Day. He was drinking a 40, and, you know, that's a felony on Bart. But, you know, being a young cop, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I, you know, asked him to step off the train, and he gets quite upset with me. And he's a much larger man than I. And the long story short, we ended up getting in a little tussle. He ended up getting arrested for, you know, resisting and delaying and all that good stuff. And, you know, because it's Bart, you don't necessarily have a car to hop in to take somebody to jail. I ended up having to ride the train from somewhere in San Francisco to our holding facility to do the paperwork.
With the suspect?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No, we do that sometimes. Where they did when I was working.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I had to spend considerable amount of time with this individual. So
right.
we got to actually chatting once everything calmed down, which is pretty interesting. But long story short, when you talk about bias and how things can go both ways, he told me about the conversation that he had with his family in downtown Oakland over Thanksgiving dinner, and it circumscribed police excessive force and racism and disparate you know, enforcement and all of those kind of things. And he said to me, you know, I really think that's what happened between you and I, that I automatically, very quickly, you know, that's the first thing that came to my mind as I was being harassed and all those things. It didn't even occur to me that I was actually breaking the law, and you were right to stop me.
Wow.
And, you know, the funny thing is we had this conversation, and I ended up, you know, kind of citing him out, which was a no-no back in those days. You had to book everybody who did a 148. But,
right.
You know, I just was like, you know, it was his preconceived notion about police.
Right.
So the bottom line is this discussion of implicit bias, racial, goes in both directions.
Certainly.
It doesn't even have to be the color of your skin. It could be the uniform that you wear.
Yeah,
right, sure. Oh, listen, here's my implicit bias story. So I used to work at the airport police in the LAXPD, and we used to arrest quite a few transportation security agency screeners, TSA screeners, okay, for theft. It got to the point where we used to joke that TSA stood for took something again, because they were always stealing stuff, right? So I come into the station, I'm watch commander, I come into through the jail from the parking lot, and I see a TSA guy in uniform sitting there in the holding area, but he's not handcuffed, he's not in the tank, whatever, right? And I go, whoa. I go, hey, man, how come this dude isn't hooked up? How come he's not in the tank? I'm talking to one of my officers. And they go, no, Sarge, no, he's a witness. He's writing a report. He's writing a statement. I'm like, oh, because to me, every time I'd seen a TSA uniform on our station, he was in custody. Right. Right? And I know the guy was greatly offended, and I apologized to him, and I moved on. But I'm just telling you, that was my implicit bias. I see a TSA uniform inside the police station. He's supposed to have handcuffs on.
And you know, not only that, it's interesting you say that. We are actually, especially when you work a specialized assignment like narcotics or gangs, you are looking for specific things that alert you to something is afoot. I mean, well, actually, just in a patrol car, as to whether something is your reasonable suspicion, probable cause. And a lot of times we take location, condition, clothing, situation, and we use that as our investigative steps as part of our investigative steps. And so this compounds the implicit bias.
Because we use it as a tool for good sometimes.
Exactly. And
most of the time.
And I think that is one of the reasons, Blake, that is so difficult for officers to accept that. and that we're out there trying to do honorable work, that all of these different variables that we're supposed to consider don't often allow us to consider things that are, I would say, strongly academic, and or that might make it look like we're being biased, or what's the other term we used to get hammered about?
Profiling.
Profiling.
There you go.
So I guess, for me, my mother's white, my father's black, and I experienced a lot of different things, and people assumed a lot of things about me growing up that made me be more open to differences, realizing that there was nothing wrong with me, whether you called me white boy or you called me the N-word. And that said, really allowed me to see things differently. And so I'm always open to a new thought, especially if it's going to make me a better person and or a police officer. But I can totally understand why a lot of my peers and maybe even leadership don't subscribe to this, because they don't think that they're doing it.
Well, I think that I'm looking at Gil, and Gil chuckled earlier, and he's writing notes. And I just kind of want to get your input or your thoughts on this as the veterano that you are, sir.
Well, the only interesting thing that Dave Blake has said that was interesting to me, at least, was when he was talking initially. He said something about how implicit bias is being framed incorrectly. And I think he's correct about that, and that's where I wanted to expand. I think this is, I don't even know what he just said.
Really?
JB just talked there for, a few minutes there. And
that was easy to track for me.
It just sounded like gobbledygook.
I'm going to have to bring a pass in here, a portable alcohol screening
Gil,
system.
it's really unfortunate that you think that, because I'm a human being sitting across from you, and you say...
He just asked me.
No, but I'm saying that was insulting. Right. Goobly gop?
That's what it sounded like to me.
Really? That's
so you weren't tracking.
Gobbledygook.
Yeah,
that's what I said.
Whatever. But I think that's that. I mean that's I can't even see how you could say that and truly believe.
Well, let's hear him explain that. Go ahead. here's your turn to respond to that.
Well, I just think it's all irrelevant. If I don't like cow tongue, okay, so therefore what? I don't eat it. That's it.
Well, how do you know you don't like it? I think that was the point. Is how do you know? Have you had it and didn't like it?
Yeah, he had sausage before. He's had cow tongue.
I'm saying, what difference does it make? It makes no difference.
It does, because you form these biases naturally.
It makes no difference whether I eat cow tongue or not. And
I think that was an example of bias.
Analogous to bias.
Right. I understand that, but I'm just saying it doesn't matter there, and it doesn't matter in police work. I never worked with a cop who said, you know what, I don't like black people, so today we're going to go arrest and
you never work with anybody who said that, because this is all implicit. It's innate, and you may not even realize that that's what you're doing. That's the whole point of this, is that we're talking about awareness of it so that it can be combated. So no, nobody said that, because they weren't even thinking that themselves consciously. They didn't even, and it's not to say that I haven't done it or JB hasn't done it or you haven't done it, but it's just natural to have bias. We know that. The key is to fight that and keep it out of your police work.
The only bias that cops have is against criminals, for God's sakes.
Okay, but how do we decide right off the bat who's a criminal and who's not a criminal?
By their actions.
Not always.
We don't racially profile. We criminal profile. We profile behavior, for God's sakes. This is
that whole race out of place thing is fiction.
Can I just finish?
I'm just asking you.
You're asking me a question, and then you interrupt me because you don't like the answer.
No. I'm asking for clarification.
Which question are you? Okay, what do you want clarification on?
You said that cops don't profile based on race.
That's right.
Profile based on behavior, right?
Correct.
And so I'm asking you, because we've had a former police officer sitting right here in this very room at this very table who has talked about this before, the whole race out of place thing. Now, Dave, you're familiar with that concept, race out of place?
Sure.
So that doesn't exist? That's just something people make up?
What is race out of place? What are you talking about?
Race out of place is if I see a white person in a black neighborhood, I'm going to pay more attention to them and maybe pull them over to see what's going on, and damn sure vice versa. If I see a black person in a white neighborhood, I'm going to pay more attention to them as a police officer, and I say I'm just speaking as a general police officer, pull them over and see what's happening with them, especially if it's during odd hours or it's during at an area I don't think it should be.
Into criminal behavior. So
why? We're just talking about race right now.
I know, but it's not relevant. What I'm telling you is that the people that you, as police officers, the people that we seek out to make contact with are doing something in an area that is known for something. By if it's a gang area or a narcotics area, then that's what we're looking at. And once we start to see all of these indicators present, we can assume, based on our experience and training, that person isn't here just because they're lost and they can't find their way on the Thomas Guide, because we used to use Thomas Guides with GPS. They're actually white people from Redondo Beach in Wilmington to buy crack cocaine. So it wasn't just because they were white and they were out of place. It was because they were white, they were out of place. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. They were in an area that was known for narcotic sales, street sales of narcotics. There was all of these things. It's not just race. That's the point I'm trying to make.
But you're saying race is a factor.
You just said it. Yeah, that was your own words. You just said it.
That was your example. They're white.
Of race out of place.
Let me give another example.
I don't want an example. I'm just saying. You asked me a question. That's my answer. Race is irrelevant to me. What is?
It was part of the formula you just laid out, though.
Right.
Yeah, but because in your example you said they were white people. So I'm saying, okay, they're white. Okay, fine. That's only part of whatever else that I see that makes me want to make contact with them. It's not just because they're white. This is a Hispanic area or a black area. And so, therefore, they probably shouldn't be here, so I'm going to stop them. That's not enough. And if cops are doing that they need to be retrained, for God's sakes.
Well,
that's not how you do it.
And that's what we're talking about.
Let me say something that might interest Gil. So I agree with what Gil's saying, okay? But so the gobbledygook that we've been talking about, and the whole cow tongue example and all that stuff, the question is, if Gil is the officer who's been working the street for the last 4 years and can recognize all those things, as opposed to one of your wives or significant others was sitting in the car with you and saw that same thing on the first night, would they have that sixth sense to say, you know what, something's not right about that? And that knowledge, that ability to recognize the gang member, to see that something's out of place, is part of this unconscious inference that we're talking about. And let's get the word bias out of there. There's another concept that's under this umbrella. It's called heuristics, and it's basically the inferences that we make based on training and experience. And that's what Gil is talking about. I'm not here to indicate that police officers are working under implicit racial bias. As a matter of fact, the scientific evidence from both the real-world statistics, at least in OIS, and some of the stuff that was recently done by Harvard Professor Roland Fryer, and some of the latest research out of Washington State University, is basically debunking some of this stuff. And one of the big points I wanted to make while I was here was that even the American Psychological Association, last year, December 2016, published an article filled with comments from PhD researchers in this field who basically said the policing profession is jumping the gun on this entire implicit racial bias thing. There is not enough what they call rigor behind the academic evidence to say exactly what racial implicit bias drives in regards to actual performance. And there's no or not enough evidence to support that any of the training that is being provided to law enforcement right now is going to make a significant long-term change at all.
We finally agree on something, Dave.
Well, I wanted to. I didn't want this. I feel like you got the impression that this whole this conversation was about this implicit racial bias driving behavior.
Well, no, I wasn't sure that that's what you were trying to do, because I was interested in when you said it was being framed incorrectly, because I totally agree with that. But I think my partners here they are of that mindset, and this is the new narrative that's being pushed out there. And I'm glad that you said that much of it has been debunked, because I think that is the problem.
Well, listen, I'm not saying that it's all about race at all.
It's not all about. No,
yeah,
nobody
I
ever said that.
I don't say that it's about race. What I do say is, I have 2 master's degrees, so I work extremely hard to understand what I present as being a position to defend. I make sure that mine does include the rigor, and that I do have the framework by which I'm making my statement or supporting my defending my hypothesis. What I'm saying is, as an on-duty active today police officer, I recognize that whether somebody be gay, lesbian, the LGBT, whether it be special needs persons, whether it be an Asian driver, all of the things that often dictate the manner and method in which we use or we deal with people, I try very diligently to be open-minded that the person I'm dealing with does not match those stereotypes, and or will that end up being a negative police contact just because I show up assuming something. And that has made me be a better person, and has made me be a better police officer, and quite frankly, it makes me feel like my blood pressure has even gone down, because I am doing things, or I'm trying to do things differently in this day and age. And Gil is absolutely right about this one thing that he constantly pushes, and I don't know that he's given a title to it, but Gil is old school. When I came on the job, I worked with dudes like Gil, and I learned from guys like Gil how to survive and how to deal with people of all races, whether a difficult situation or a pleasant situation. I learned how to not turn that bad. So my point is that there are a number of things that I have had to change in the way I do things over my last 27 years that Gil has not had to face and are foreign to him. And I understand that, because there are things that Gil dealt with that thankfully Gil dealt with it, that I was able to come on this job. Being an African-American man, the things that Hispanics took, the things that other African-American men took for me to get this job. So I'm open to it. I've listened to several people, both African-American, female, and now you, a male white, I assume. And that's only because of my auditory. My point is I think this is something I think that's something to consider. You know what I mean?
You know, for me,
I absolutely 100% agree with you that in what you're talking about, at least in my perspective, is in what we've overcome as in society is explicit racial bias. This conversation is about what implicit bias drives people to do.
Right.
And my overwhelming bottom line point in regards to implicit racial bias is that although it may exist, and it has been shown to exist in certain parameters like the Harvard Implicit Bias Association test that's online and those types of things, but the contemporary science, both statistics from real world and the simulated implicit bias, putting people in the
test
adoption simulator,
right,
is simulator studies. The most recent one that's been done, the officers showed implicit bias on the initial test, but when they went through the simulator, they actually showed reverse racism in that they hesitated longer with black suspects than they did with white suspects. And I'm telling you, the unfortunate thing is we're getting this implicit bias and overt racism in law enforcement shoved down our throats by academia. And there's very few. You start looking at some of the stuff that they're doing, they don't apply. They're using pure statistics, pure numbers.
Right.
And you guys know that there is context behind these things that needs
Sure.
to be explored.
Certainly.
So I'm not saying that there isn't any racial bias out there in policing. I know there is. But whether it is to the level that we need to change the entire law enforcement paradigm and spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on implicit bias training that hasn't even been proven to work, I find that to be a problem. What we ought to be focusing on is that if there is implicit bias, racial bias, then why does it exist, and what can we do to change the cause of it?
Well, see, and here's the thing. First of all, it's a hard sell for me, and maybe it's because it's been, my life experiences, where I definitely have noticed things happening to me because of who I was as opposed to what I look like as opposed to who I was, okay? And things happen around me and people reacting to me differently. So I'm a big believer in anecdotal evidence and personal experience.
Sure.
To me that is as important as statistics gathered by whoever. So because I live that and I know, I can kind of recall that happening and it sticks with me more. But in terms of us saying, hey, this is something that could exist, I'm glad we're even having the conversation about it existing, because up till now it's been we don't do that, or people saying, hey,
there's certain things we don't talk about.
Well, that's the other thing we don't talk about. Again, because it's something that's often done on a subconscious level, and thank God it's been, again, like you said, it's no longer overt, it's no longer explicit, except in extreme cases, as Gil likes to call them in outlier situations.
Right.
But I will still say, and here's where the proof is in the pudding, and when we talk about implicit bias and whether or not it exists, out of I believe it was 9 out of 12 case studies of off-duty or undercover officers being killed by accident, or not by accident, just mistakenly killed by their on-duty counterparts, 9 out of those 12 were black or brown. Okay? 9 out of 12 police officers in this country are not black or brown. So those minority officers are overrepresented in that statistic. And the question has to be why, because we know they weren't doing anything to threaten the lives or safety of these other officers or anybody else. But that was somehow the perception that they represented a threat. Okay? So that's something that is yet to be delved into or yet to be explained. But we have, a dozen dead police officers who were killed by other police officers. And the overwhelming majority of them were minority officers. So to me, I mean, since we know now that they weren't doing anything that they shouldn't have been doing, what was it about them that caused them to be perceived as a threat? And the one thing they all had in common is that they were minority. Well, not all of them, but 9 out of the 12
were they on
were
duty?
the minorities.
Were they off duty?
It's a mixture. This is a mixture. There's on duty, off duty, undercover.
Bunch of variables, for God's sake.
Well, but the APA.
What does that got to do with it? Hold on a second. What does that got to do with anything? The variables that play into it. What does that got to do with anything? Whether they were on duty or off duty, what does that got to do with anything? If we're talking about where they were and what their actions were, what difference does that make?
You're trying.
Well, it makes a huge difference.
Well,
I think,
please tell me.
I think if you look at the bottom line is, apply the Graham standard to the situation in which they were in. Was it reasonable or was it not? Now, that's just part of the equation. You would have to look at all the situations that were similar involving white officers as well to determine under the same variables what they were doing, the context of the event, whether they had their guns out, everything, just like you would any, OIS investigation. And then, once all those variables are in place and you look and see, all right, these 20 are exactly the same, but 80% of the black officers were shot and only 20% of the white police officers were shot in this context, then you have something.
9 out of 12,
well,
which is a huge overrepresentation statistically speaking, right?
Pure statistics, yes.
Okay.
And you just cited an APA study, but an APA study was just released last week that people in general fear African American males more than they do any other race, and they cite that the African Americans males are larger, They
look older,
They look
more menacing.
They look more menacing. They look
A la
more
Tamir
older.
Rice.
They
You guys
feared.
look younger. What are you talking about?
Well, but again, this is
Black don't
you know,
crack, but that's at a certain age. That's at a certain age.
Again, this is a study with 950 participants that clearly pointed out it wasn't just white folks; it was people.
Right.
And so when you look at that and you consider that the disparities involving African Americans who were shot by the police, and we're taught if we shoot somebody, we're supposed to consider a number of factors, including height, weight, what we know about their ability, if we've dealt with them before, there are a number of variables. But this APA study this was just in general. It's had nothing to do, in essence, with law enforcement as the group that they were, the primary group that they were studying. This was people in general. And when you talk about that, that you're talking about, again, wondering why African American males feel targeted. I mean, this is something that people subliminally have reported that this is the way they feel.
And you're absolutely right. There's probably 30 years worth of science that in regards to not only the these perceptions of people of color, but also the same type of things with women, with politicians. There's been all kinds of studies in this contextual area that we're talking about. I don't disagree with that. I don't want to get lost between the fact that I agree with you guys that this, implicit bias does exist. It's applicable to everyone, no matter what race, creed, color you are. The big point that I wanted to make is, in specific context to policing, there's not enough research that says specifically that officers act upon their implicit biases. And as I said, the emerging research is starting to show that there's actually an opposite effect, at least in one study. So yes, I've had this conversation.
We're going to take Gil's little toy away from him. And here's my thing. In terms of, and being an African American male, I'm going to be a little more biased toward this, since that's the word of the hour, is biased. But so as far as how other people or society in general views us, when I go to back when we used to write checks, and I get asked for 2 forms of ID, and the lady right in front of me only got asked for 1 form of ID. When I walk down the sidewalk and the lady coming toward me crosses the street until I get past her, and then she comes back to my side of the street after she's safely away from me, it's a little offensive, but it doesn't really have the impact on me that maybe getting stopped by a police officer does. So it's a little more high stakes. And so when we talk about people in general, that's one thing. Police officers, first of all, we like to think that we're handpicked from amongst society, right? And that we've got knowledge, skills, and abilities to separate us from the citizenry. But we have this inordinate amount of power also. So our biases, whether they're the same or less, can play out in much more consequential ways than the cashier at the grocery store who wants 2 forms of ID for a check or whatever.
I think that's what he just said. He just said that the data doesn't show that.
What I'm saying is, if it exists at all, that still needs to be studied, and it still needs to be something that's addressed, because the consequences are so much. Even if the incident is lower, the price tag is higher because the consequences are so serious and have such gravity when we take action, as opposed to when a bus driver takes action or a taxi cab don't want to pick me up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right, but he just said that the data doesn't show that about cops.
Now, did you say the data doesn't show that at all, or that it's not?
So the research into implicit bias and police decisions to shoot, let's just stick in that area. It goes all the way back to a guy named Joshua Carell in the early 90s. And basically the studies, he's had people sit down at a computer and showed, black people, white people in different threatening positions, or with or without guns, that kind of thing. And decided very quickly, 500 milliseconds was the time limit. They had to push a button. Either they were shooting this person or they weren't. Now, in a lot of those test criteria, they found implicit bias in that decision to shoot, the racial disparity sitting behind a computer screen. They also found, because they took civilians from the same demographic area that these police officers were policing, and found that they too had similar biases against black people. But what they also found was that police officers controlled their responses a little bit more.
Right, as we're
now, they
supposed
still
to.
Showed, but now this is the problem with the research is now it is transitioned. We've become much more technologically savvy. And one of the only places that have done this is Washington State University, and they have a simulator. So they're bringing officers in, they're having them do the same IAT sit down behind a computer thing, and they are showing racial bias. But when they put them in the simulator and have them react to real live threats, whether they be black or white, they're finding that actually officers are hesitating in those situations.
Right,
So
and I think you wrote about that in the article, right? And it was
Right.
because they wanted, and there was an inference that it was because of the worried about scrutiny or extra scrutiny if they were to shoot an unarmed black person.
Ferguson effect, all those
Right,
kinds of
right.
things. And maybe it is.
Which
Maybe it
I would agree is very dangerous. It's a dangerous road to go down because police officers are already concerned about how their decisions are going to be perceived, just in general. And as I listened to this exchange with you and George on this, I'm thinking that if we address implicit bias, I actually think that it might have a significant effect on our thought process, even if someone did think about things racially. And the reason why I'm saying this is, again, we're humans first, and we do have a significant responsibility. And I think that if we recognize those areas in which we can improve because we are thinking differently about our biases, not bigotry, not racism or anything like that, I think that it allows us to evolve and to still be good stewards, but yet continue to be safe and keep officer safety at the forefront, regardless of the scrutiny, because we are thinking differently. And I don't know, maybe that's just my feeling, but I've seen so many changes in this profession, whether it be use of force, training, tactics, the way we deal with the public, community policing, whatever the key phrase of the year is.
Right.
But I think we are improving. And I'll honestly say I don't really believe that there is a lot of racial bias in policing to the degree that some people
right, because some people tell you everything is racially driven.
Right.
Sure. And I don't think either one of us are saying that.
Right. And I will say that I think over the years it has diminished, because when I first came on the job in the locker room, I heard a white boy yell out the N-word in a conversation with some other white officers, describing someone. And
wow. In the police station?
In the locker room. And I was new on probation, and I don't know who said it, but at the end of the day, I got past that and made sure that the people that I rode with know that I didn't play that, that is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to refer to people that we deal with like that, and it's damn sure not going to happen with me. And so I think that there have been a lot of changes over the last 25 years.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine any police officer nowadays in any agency I worked at coming out of their mouth or something like that, or any variant of that, to anybody.
It brings up a good point, though, because we're talking about biases, and especially implicit, and I introduced it as being learned over a lifetime and all those type of things that we discussed earlier. What happened, and I've heard stories just like this, and it's bone chilling, it's crap. For that to have happened to anyone. But look at the change in society, not inside the police department, but inside society. What people are being taught as they grow.
Right.
What we learned as we were growing up and what our children are learning now as they enter into the workforce. They have erased some of the problems of historical problems, because they're not exposed to those issues anymore, or they've been taught over their lifespan up to this point not to do those things, or those things are incorrect. To respect.
Right. The example isn't being laid out there anymore that it's cool to do that. It's, yeah, that's societal progress, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that this is a topic that it bears studying and it bears delving into, simply because of, like I said before, everybody's got some sort of bias, but the average person's bias doesn't translate into life and death or major decisions that impact people's freedom, safety, health, etc., right? So it's especially important that just like we go through other levels of scrutiny, hell, to get this job, you have to go through a whole lot of selection, right? And then after you go through that selection, you got to go through rigorous training, and then after that, you got a year of probation. So, you know, the bar is set pretty high, and the selection process is pretty stringent. There's not very many jobs that they check everything. You know, those of you listening out there who are not in law enforcement or public safety, when's the last time you went and got a job and they went back and looked at your grades from high school, right?
Or they make you fill out it's up, the post PHS is up to 32 pages now.
A 32-page background, right? So what I'm saying is the level of scrutiny and the level of screening is there, and then the level of training is there, and there's nothing wrong with implementing this as an additional layer of training that officers get exposed to, because you know, a lot of people may not even be aware that they have implicit bias just as human beings. I'm not even talking about as police officers.
Right.
But again, the cashier at Walmart, the bus driver, the cab driver, the guy who flips burgers down at Fatburger, his implicit bias doesn't have the same impact. So it's certainly something that I hope they continue to study, and it sounds like they are going in that direction.
And it sounds like,
can you look into it?
And it sounds like cops are doing a good job of controlling it.
And again, as we should, because we control other innate things too. We control our innate survival instinct. Also, we control our anger. You know, that's why, and I tell people this all the time, there's a section in the California Penal Code, 415 something, it's a subsection of disturbing the peace, that is challenging another to fight.
415.5.
There's a 415.5 challenging another to fight. So if one gang member were to say to another gang member, like call him out, hey punk, I'll whip your ass or whatever, you could arrest him for that because he's challenging another to fight. But if that same gang member turns to me as a police officer and challenges me to fight, I'm not going to be able to file any charges on him against that, because case law holds that I, as a police officer, am supposed to be immune to that sort of provocation.
Right.
So that him challenging me to fight is not likely to
result in
a violent response from me, right? So this goes along with that too. That you know, there's things that we have to control. Now, if I was off duty, that's another thing.
He better get with the program right quick. Or
But I'm just saying, you know, I'm not saying that there wouldn't be consequences. I'm just saying that legally, California Penal Code Section 415.5 would likely not result in successful prosecution.
Yeah, cops don't need that.
So I'm saying that you know, there's all these other standards that we're held to that are more stringent. And I think that it's, number one, it's encouraging that police officers are doing better on the implicit bias test, but it's still something that should be studied and measured.
Well, I agree. I agree. I mean, I really do believe that we need to continue to research, but, you know, the bottom line for where I come from is, you know, if this implicit racial bias is a problem, it needs to be dealt with at its source. The research needs to be directed towards what is causing, you know, people, not only just police officers, but the society in general, to have a fear of a black man.
Well, that's where your cops are coming from. That's the thing, is we recruit police officers from general society. So yeah, no, absolutely right. And there's a bunch of reasons, some of which. You know, and there's a bunch of fault there and a bunch of fingers to be pointed in a bunch of different directions. Believe me.
I think your bias is coming out.
No, it's hey, I'm just saying, I'm pointing the fingers in all directions.
That's
so,
but that's your bias.
So it is.
Yeah.
So Dave, if someone wants to reach out to you, do you have social media? Do you have a website you'd like people to visit, or et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, if somebody, probably the best way to reach me is to just Google Dave Blake and Police, and that'll take you to the articles, and of course the author bio there has a way to email me through that route if somebody wants to ask me a question.
Okay, very good, and that's how I was able to reach out to you. So he responds really quickly. I'll give him that for sure. And listen, you know, good luck on pursuing that PhD. and it sounds like you're getting after it, man, and that's fantastic because we need academics who actually do have experience in the street and not just in the ivory tower.
That's right.
So I do applaud you in those efforts, and I appreciate your contributions to the show. And I'm hoping you'll join us again, or if you're down in LA at any point, man, you can come sit in with us on a Thursday night.
I'll be down Monday. Class, but I got to turn around and leave Wednesday or what?
All right. Well,
really
catch us on a Thursday.
Well, listen, we could at least meet for a cigar, for God's sakes, even if we don't do the show.
Yeah, that's
I'll
true,
be
right?
in Burbank.
Burbank, there we go.
You should hook this up, George. You should.
All right, I got your number, man. I'll text you, and we'll do a ride-along radio show, cigar night or something, and
that'd be fun.
Keep up the good work, man. This is some great research, and I expect that it'll have some telling results, and I think it'll be helpful for humankind as well as law enforcement.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Hey, man, again, we really appreciate you, and we'll reach out to you, and I'll send you the link to the show so you can share it on your social media once the show is posted. All right, and that was Dave Blake, owner of Blake Consulting and Training. POTUS, there's one video. I've been dying to show this video for like 3 weeks now. It's the last video from the 7.5. Can we get that video? It's the last one on there. It says Michael Dowd, the 7.5. It's the very last one on the outline.
And I do have the picture.
There it is. There it is. That's the picture of C. Haynes, Kevin Haynes. It's Gil O'Reilly. He's also the one who crowned you, Gil O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Gil O'Reilly's #1 fan. He's got your old picture, uniform picture on his shirt.
T-shirt.
Outstanding.
I made some T-shirts like that.
Yeah, right. Here you go. Get some pictures.
I'm gonna
get some
send them out
T-shirts
to my
made.
fans. I'm gonna
Send them out to your
to my
fan club.
Did you notice how big he?
Okay.
Did you notice how he had fit into the APA study of black men being bigger?
Oh, right. And he blew it up, right? And he was behind me. He dwarfed me. Hey, apparently we got a caller on the line. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is the famous Eddie Goodman.
Eddie Goodman. Gil's buddy.
Goodman.
And who's been a guest on the Ride Along radio show before.
Of course. Yeah.
So what's happening, Eddie?
I got a story, man. I was in Burbank, and I was lost. And I was looking to pick my niece up because she was taking acting class. And I noticed an officer, he was in the car, and he was just sitting, he was looking at me. I was looking at him, but I was actually looking for the address, but looking at him, he was looking at me.
Were you in a moving vehicle?
You know how you go into like one of those parking lots where there's a bunch of suites?
Uh-huh.
Right, like an office park?
Was your car moving, and was the officer's car moving, or was it stopped? How were you guys?
No, it was stopped. He was like in the middle of a turning lane.
Okay.
And so then I turned into the like little complex, and I was looking for the address.
Okay, all right.
And so I got a phone call. They're like, my niece was like, nah, you're on the wrong side of the town. Like, I was in Burbank. She said, you got to come over here. You're in the wrong location. I was like,
okay.
I said, GPS brought me here, so let me go exactly where you at or whatever the case may be. So anyway, I go, I pick up my niece. When I got to the location where I was at, I stood there for about 45 minutes because she wasn't finished taking her acting class. It was almost over with or whatever. So anyway, so we get ready to leave. So we leaving. We heading towards on Hollywood Way. Going coming back towards where the 101 is and all that stuff.
By Universal Studios. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So so I seen a police car pass me, and I look in the rear view, and he busted a U-turn.
Right.
So I was like, well, you know what? Even before all that, my niece was like, well, I'm home. We stopped to get something to eat or whatever. So we stopped at that. So he passed me. He busted you. And a little bit before that, she asked me, could we stop and get something to eat? And I was like, yeah, cool. So we was by that Del Taco. So I pulled over, and we got in the line to get her something to eat or whatever. So we get her something to eat. The cop comes and pulls into the Del Taco right when you order your food and you're about to pull out.
Right.
I pulled over, and he lit me up. So I stopped, and he jumped out. He's like, why are you avoiding me? And I'm like, why are you avoiding? What are you talking about? He's like, wasn't you over there in the other area earlier? I was like, yeah, I was lost. I was looking for my niece, and I was actually at the wrong location.
Right.
And whatever the case may be. And then he was like, well, you got your license and registration? So I didn't argue with him. He gave me my license, my registration, and my insurance and all that stuff. And then he came back. He was like, I just want to know why was you trying to avoid me? It seemed like you was trying to avoid me. I said, no, sir. I wasn't trying to avoid you. Like I said, I was lost earlier when you seen me, And now I was heading home, and then she wanted to get something to eat, and I stopped and got her something to eat. I said, personally, I wasn't like, avoiding you. It's not like I seen you, was like, oh, well, let me try to avoid you.
Right.
And then after he ran me and seen I was cool and everything, and he was like, oh, okay. But he was asking questions like, where you coming from?
Sure. Well, now, what do you think that was about?
It was about race.
He yelled.
It had nothing to do with nothing. I'm in Burbank, you know what I'm saying? And he seen a black dude out of place, what that black dude doing over here.
Turn your house down, man. You got feedback.
Okay. And then so when he see me again, he busted the U-turn. He waited. This is what tripped me out. I went in line to get something to eat.
Right, he figured you were just trying to duck him. But listen, I've been on both sides of that equation. And I've had officers bust a U-turn and come back behind me and either contact me or run my plate and then get the results back and then just peel off or whatever. So,
I'd like to know what he was driving.
A Volvo SUV.
You know what, Eddie? I just want to jump in here. As I was listening to your story, and when you said you pulled into the thing, the first lot, and you were lost, and then you got a call from her, and then you took off, and then you pick her up, and then you see the guy again, and then you go to Del Taco. I was thinking in my head as I was hearing you tell the story, from the officer's perspective, it probably looked to him like you were trying to avoid him getting behind you. That's what I would have thought. So obviously, that's exactly what he thought.
Well, here's the thing, though. So if you do think that, I guess that could be viewed as suspicious, but either you got a violation or you don't, right? Yeah. Or you have something to match up to that, or you don't.
Well, what about the other drivers that were around too? I mean, I'm sure Burbank has a lot of traffic.
I don't know what time of day. What time was it? What time was it?
It was early. It was like around 5, 6. Well, I'll say about 6 to 7 o'clock. Going towards the evening time, like 6, 7.
Okay.
It wasn't late, like 3 or 4 in the morning.
And how was traffic? And what was the weather like, Eddie?
The weather was actually nice that day.
Well, listen.
I assume he's asking.
I think we all got stories. Gil doesn't have any stories because he hasn't been the victim of that. But
so sorry about it, my friend.
Those of us,
And I tripped on how he waited for me. I was like, for real? I mean,
right, because he thought you were trying to ditch him, and he's gonna get to the bottom of that. But the question is, how many other people who didn't look like you exhibited that exact same behavior earlier in the day, and he didn't even pick up on it because he wasn't keying on them?
We will never know.
We'll never know. Right? We'll never know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I gotta say.
All right, man. Hey, I appreciate your call, man. We have to have you back on the show in studio.
Okay, try Glendale next time.
All right. Wow. So as we close, again, I've been trying to show this video forever. We just never get to it. I know we're out of time, but I'm hoping we can leave you, young officers who are watching this program, or those of you who want to get into law enforcement, and need these words of guidance from somebody who went horribly wrong in his career. Michael Dowd, who was the dirtiest cop in America, dirtiest cop in NYPD, which is saying something. That's like saying the tallest guy in the NBA.
He was dirty,
right? That's saying something. He was. Let me tell you something. Michael Dowd, Kenny Urell, and those guys at the 7.5 were crooked as a barrel of snakes, and he got in a lot of trouble. Okay, like he went to the penitentiary trouble, and he has a video where he's giving advice to new police officers. And no, that's because we'll be here. We'll be here till 10:30. So sorry, caller. Catch us next Thursday, and so we'll play this video and then we'll get up out of here.
Here's a text from, I assume, a new police officer. What do you tell new police officers so that this doesn't happen to them?
Good question. I'm glad there's a new police officer that wants to hear it rather than some old crotchety guy who's mad.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say is this, and this is how I try to explain to people when I go into speaking engagements. I say, look, remember that what you're doing, if you're going to do something corrupt, it's not your partner you're hurting. It's the police department and his family you're going to destroy. Yeah. Because really, the destruction that took place in our lives, it's more than ourselves. Because oftentimes, if I get hurt, if I get in trouble, it's not you. So when you think you're going to do something corrupt and go over the line as a cop, and you're asking your partner to co-sign to that, what you're doing is you're potentially destroying his family. So how much do you really love him? Because you guys got to love each other to work together. You have to. There's got to be a love. There's got to be a bond stronger than a marriage, because you got each other's back, 24/7. So if you're willing to take this guy away from his wife and kids, or his family, or his mother, or his dad, whatever he or she is involved with, then how much do you really love this guy?